Hello, opponents.
It's me again, Antonio D'Amico. This is Pointy Hat, and welcome to Tip of the Hat. That's right, this is not D&D with a twist. This is a show where I give you D&D advice. I pick something people need help with, a new way to run the game, or whatever I feel like, and at the end I give you something that you can use in your games. Well, that's enough of an introduction. Let's get right into it. D&D Rivals. The concept of a rival, and especially of a rival team, is anything but new. We have seen it in everything, from anime to music, romance, superheroes, more superheroes. They're everywhere. They are particularly common in Eastern media. The protagonist team fighting a rival team is a staple of the shonen anime genre, but it extends to nearly every genre in anime, including shoujo. But what is a rival team? Well, contrary to what you might believe, they are not necessarily a villain team. That is an entirely different thing. They can be that, but they don't have to be that. They are often a team of comparable size and skill to the team of the heroes. And as opposed to a true villain team, they can be antagonistic, but they don't have to be villainous. The difference between villain and antagonist is tenuous most of the time, with people using both as synonyms. But there is a difference, especially in storytelling, which, believe it or not, is what we're doing when we play D&D. You could say that all villains are antagonists, but not all antagonists are villains. A villain is a character archetype. It's a character that has active malicious intent that goes against what the protagonist is trying to achieve or prevent. Sauron from The Lord of the Rings is a villain. Emperor Papa Poutine from The Star Wars is a villain. Preminger from the direct-to-video musical fantasy film Barbie as the Princess and the Pauper is a villain. As opposed to this, an antagonist is not a character archetype, it's a specific role in the plot. An antagonist is a test for the protagonist. Either through their differing goals or because of their actions, they are something that the protagonist has to overcome. Elsa in Frozen spends a good chunk of the movie as an antagonist to Anna. She isn't the villain, but her goals put her at odds with the protagonist. Although if you want to get super technical, you could say that the movie has two protagonists who are each other the antagonist of the other, but anyway. Her role in the plot is that of an obstacle for Anna to overcome, at least in the beginning. She overcomes it with sisterly love, but she's still an antagonist. Whenever an anime of the "we go to a high school where we fight each other" variety has a tournament arc, which is roughly 86% of the time, most if not all the characters are antagonists to the protagonist, even if they aren't villainous. They might even be friends, but their role in the narrative at that moment is that of antagonist, obstacles to overcome. In D&D, there isn't one protagonist. That is, if you're playing the game right. And yes, I don't mind saying playing the game right about this. And God help you if an NPC is the protagonist, oh god. No, all the player characters equally share the role of protagonists in the story, which is very, very rare in fiction. Even ensemble cast and cast of thousands like Game of Thrones have one or two protagonists that rise above the rest of the main cast. So that's why we're talking about rival teams, and not one single rival. In D&D, there's not one protagonist, so we need a rival team. But okay, we get it. Rival teams are something quite common in media, but why put rivals in your games? There's something very, very powerful in having a team of antagonists in your game. D&D often suffers from power creep when it comes to the stakes in the narrative. You might start off your adventure by saving some randos from some brigands at like level 1, but it very, very quickly turns into, we must defeat the evil wizard '-name, lest he succeeds in his plan to... destroy the world! But where do you go from there? That's where the power creep comes in, and destroying the world is not enough. The next guy wants to destroy the planes, then all the planes, then it goes on and on and on. The stakes that a rival team brings aren't as life or death or world-ending as others, but conversely, they are way more grounded, more realistic. They feel more real, and the consequences of failing ring more true. We as people can understand a rivalry between two groups of peers that want different things much better than we can understand the ramifications of like trying to stop the nefarious plans of the evil guy that wants to destroy the world by starting a war against the concept of buses and trains and building bad transportation infrastructure. Wait. Maybe that was a bad example. Point is, the stakes that a rival team brings feel lower, but feel more real. But this is not the only plus to having them in your game. Rival teams can be much more of a presence in your campaign. If they are run correctly, you will run into them several times during the story, which means you can see them grow and change as people and as warriors. Villains in D&D are often pretty static. They start at a very high power level, and then the whole campaign is about the party catching up to that and beating their ass. Yes, at one point, they might gain the, baby rattle of doom and sorrow, which allows them to unlock their baby hairs of dark mystical power, which is just what they needed to destroy the multiverse as we know it. But that's a pretty steep jump in power level. A rival team, conversely, grows slowly and methodically, just like the player characters, and more importantly, at the same pace as the player characters. Having them in your game allows the PCs to fight against equals for once, and test how much they've grown as heroes. Another thing that rival teams bring to your D&D table is a sense of a living, breathing world. The heroes might be the protagonists of the story, but that doesn't mean that the rest of the world is completely frozen while they are off training goblins to do their bidding or whatever. Your PCs being able to see how their rivals have moved around and done their own thing in this same world will make it feel much more alive, like the world is real, complex, and filled with actual people, and not 20 to 25 NPCs that stay completely motionless as they wait for the players to press A in front of them so they can pop up their little dialogue box. It's much more realistic. The third reason, and my favorite reason to have a rival team, is that a rival is an incredibly effective way to facilitate change and a character arc for your PCs. If the rival characters are done correctly, the PCs could see their own faults in them, or they could become aspirational, or cautionary tales as examples of what not to do. They could see the rivals growing and changing as people and becoming better, or vice versa. All of this hinges on one thing. The rival team must be constructed by you, the DM, to be foils to your characters. But how do we do that? How do we make a rival team in general? So many questions. Good thing that's the next section. How to make a rival team. So before we get into the thick of it, I should acknowledge that Call of the Netherdeep, the official D&D book for which Matthew Mercer co-led the design for, has its own cast of rivals. See? Here they are, right on the cover. I was honestly so happy to see this in an official book because I've been making rival teams for my players for as long as I've been DMing D&D. I had watched way too much anime and played way too many JRPGs for me not to try that out with my campaign. And I think it's such an incredible tool that people rarely, if ever, use. The book is very good on integrating the rivals into the story, letting you always know where they are, their reactions to something, their plans, their goals, and all of that is fantastic. Go check that out if that's interesting to you. But the book offers you a set of 5 pre-written characters as your rivals, and I think that pre-written rivals miss some of the most fun aspects of a rival team, having those rivals be foils to the heroes. And that's where this video you're watching comes in. So let's get into it. So I've been talking a whole lot about foils, but what is that exactly? Well, just like an antagonist, a foil is a role a character can take in a story. The role of a foil is to highlight another character's personality and character traits. They do this by simply existing in the proximity of another character. They are contrasts. The foil's character traits bring out the other character's attributes by inhabiting the same story. The most basic example of this, for example, is a nice, humble character having a mean, vain sister. The mean sister is a foil to the nice sister because she serves as a comparison. She contrasts the nice sister's character traits. Now we can get into something much more complicated and fun. Maybe we have a protagonist that always believes in doing the right thing and being kind, and that protagonist has a friend that also wants to do good but believes that sometimes we must do the wrong thing to achieve that. Those two characters are foils to each other because even if they share a common goal, the way in which they get to that goal and their belief system contrast one another. A foil doesn't have to mean opposites, it just means that their characters bring out each other's attributes. Hell, you probably had foils in your own party without even trying. Prissy noble pragmatist and country bumpkin idealist, foils. So let's see how we go about using foils to make a rival team. For the sake of convenience, I'm going to divide foils in 2 groups. Now, the distinction between these two is not cut and dry, it's more of a spectrum, but they can be useful when trying to come up with characters. The first one is what we would call an opposite. This is the easiest one to make and the easiest one to identify. Caution, easy does not mean bad. Characters that are the opposite can be extremely effective foils. As a matter of fact, if you're starting out and you've never done this sort of writing before, maybe do this one exclusively for your rival team. This one is the easiest to do and delivers great results. Take a PC in your party, for example, let's say one of your players made a heart of gold paladin that always follows the rules and always strives to always do the right thing, always. The foil to that character could be an ex-convict that believes that laws are often unjust and that everyone should be out there just for themselves. That's it, it's that easy. You just created a foil. Those two characters are the opposites of one another, and they will interact and highlight each other's characteristics beautifully, and could start a really cool, really fun rivalry. Neat. The second type of foil I call a mirror, or a funhouse mirror. These two characters are very similar to one another in many ways, but they have one singular thing in which they are the opposite of one another. I found that these types of foils tend to make for great rivalries because these characters often share flaws, and nothing upsets you more than seeing your flaw in someone else. As an example, let's say that one of the PCs in your party is a rich heir of a wealthy, noble house whose parents have put an insane amount of pressure to carry on the family name. The funhouse mirror foil to this character could be another child of a wealthy, noble house, except they are the 8th son and their parents have quite literally never cared for them even a little bit. Perfect foils and rivals. The PC can resent the rival because they were constantly put under impossible expectations while they weren't, while the rival might resent the PC because their parents cared about them and expected so much from them, whereas their own parents didn't expect anything and basically forgot about them. Do you see now why this is cool? This is why making your own is so much better. You can tailor them to your PCs. Store-bought is fine, but make your own. You know, if you can. Okay, so we have our first and most important ingredient to make a rival team. We have to make them foils to the PCs. The second step is to make them equal empowered to the players. Level them up as they go. This is something that Call of the Netherdeep does beautifully. As I said before, this allows the rivals to always be a fun challenge and allows the PCs to actually measure themselves against peers that learn and grow. It also makes the world feel like a breathing, living thing, yada yada yada, you get it. The third step is to put them in a rivalry against the players, but not in direct opposition. At least not at first. We are not going for villains, but rather antagonists for your players. Maybe they want to accomplish something similar to the players, but they want to do it in a completely different way. Maybe both the player team and the rival team are in competition with each other. This way, they can serve as antagonists at the start of the campaign, and based on how their relationship with the players evolves, they can grow and mature into something else. Maybe allies, maybe actual full-blown villains. Who knows? Certainly not you, the DM. You gotta wait to see what your players decide. Alright, we arrive at the fourth and final step to make a rival team for your D&D game. Give them their own personal arcs that mirror those of the players. If the player character is looking for their lost memories, maybe their rival is also looking for their lost memories, and they find out that the memory they lost is the memory of each other. They were siblings this whole time. Their arcs mirror one another just like they were foils and mirrors of each other. Having the players and the rival's arc mirror one another offers you very interesting ways to propel a player's own arc. This is a fantastic way to get some actual character growth out of the player characters. Okay, that's the recipe to do rival characters, but it's hard to actually see what that means in an actual game. So why don't we just do that? Why don't we make some PCs and a rival team for those PCs? Why don't I make it extra hard for myself and add some custom art to go with it? Let's go. So as we have established, in order to make a rival team composed of character foils, we need an actual party as a starting point. You can't be the rival of nobody in particular. For the sake of brevity, and for the sake of me not having to draw too much, let's say that this is a player party of 3 adventurers. I like the example I gave for the mirror foil before, so let's expand on that. Our first PC is Alois, the paladin. Alois was born the only son to a famed knight of a very prestigious order. He has an insanely powerful sense of duty and honor that was instilled in him basically since birth. His mother gave him everything she had and pushed him to be the very best out of all his classmates, and decided for him that he would follow in the family tradition and become a knight. He's had to bear an insane level of expectations on his shoulders since day one and is deathly afraid of failure. Very typical for me as a character, I know. I don't know why. I just love an overachieving, nervous wreck who is constantly afraid that I'm not good enough and I have to make my family proud and be as good as they want me to be, or else I'm a failure. I mean, him, Alois. I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not projecting, shut up! For our second PC, what if we went with one of the most overdone and yet one of my favorite tropes ever? Sorella is a dwarven princess, but she is in disguise. And literally not a single person is fooled by it. Everybody can tell. She was smuggled out of her castle the night where her parents were murdered in a political coup by another noble family. Now, she travels as a bard, hoping to visit her father's bannermen and raise an army to take back her kingdom. Despite what she's gone through, she's still very, very new to living in the real world and has a pretty idealistic, and not very realistic, vision of how the world works. She's naive and cheery, a bright-eyed princess. She still assumes that the world functions like it does in stories, with hidden princesses and valiant knights. And finally, to contrast a bit with these two, let's make our third PC a bit of a criminal. Turmeric the Thief was born to a mother they never knew in the deadly criminal underbelly of a big port town. The criminal underbelly of this city swallowed them instantly, and before they could spell, they were going on missions to steal stuff from ships. They discovered pretty early on that they had a great nose and developed a great reputation as a spice thief, which is where they got their name. One day, in one of these missions, they stole what they believed was a shipment of highly valued saffron, but when they opened the box, they found a mysterious glowing plant inside. And every guard in the city was looking for them. They are ruthless, cynical, have an awful sense of humor, and don't trust anyone but their pet rat named Baby. Neat. Okay, we have our party. Alois, Sorella, and Turmeric. Let's give them a common goal. I am a sucker for competitions and they lend themselves so well to the rival structure, so let's do that. These three have entered a monster hunting contest. Several teams of 3 are sent to hunt beasts that are a thorn on the side of Fantasy City, working title, and if they succeed, they get a cash prize and a good serving of fame and fortune. Alois wants to win this contest to bring even more glory to his family and for his parents to finally be proud of him. Turmeric wants the cash so they can pay someone to identify these weird glowing plants and why the guard wants them back so badly. And Sorella wants to be declared the victor so she may have an audience with the mayor of Fantasy City, working title, who is one of her father's bannermen, and try to convince him to help her take back her throne. We have a motivation for our party, we have our party members, we are ready to make those rivals. So let's recap. We know that 1. The rivals must be foils to our PCs, either opposites or mirrors. 2. They must be of equal power level to the players. 3. They must have a rivalry with the players, but not be villainous, or at least not yet. And 4. They must have their own personal arcs that also mirror those of the players. Let's get into it. For Alois, let's go for the mirror method to make the foil. Much like Alois, Fernanda was born in a rich and noble family of knights, but she was the 7th child. Her family basically forgot about her as soon as she was born. She wanted to keep the tradition of the family and become a knight, but her parents were focused on her older siblings who had already taken great steps towards that. Nobody expected anything out of her. When she announced that she was also planning to become a knight, she barely got anything more than, "That's nice, dear." She has fought all her life to be seen by her parents, and is stopping at nothing to make that goal a reality. That's it. Perfect foil to Alois. They are very similar, but they have a key difference that makes them clash constantly. Alois envies Fernanda because she got to choose what she wanted, and she wasn't under constant crushing expectation. Meanwhile, Fernanda envies Alois because his whole family expected great things from him and gave him everything they had for him to become a knight. The drama. It writes itself. For Sorella's foil, let's go with the opposites method. If Sorella is a princess, Dario is the son of a poor blacksmith in the same dwarven kingdom that Sorella comes from. Turns out, Sorella's dad, while a very sweet and gentle parent, was a pretty awful king that let his kingdom come to ruin while under his rule. Dario and his family had been plotting a revolution against the king for a while when the noble coup against the king happened. He has now left the kingdom with a goal. He is looking to amass money and people so they can use this time of political unrest to rise against the new king and end the monarchy system once and for all. Nice foil. Finally, for Turmeric, let's do a foil that is somewhat in the middle between an opposite and a mirror. Moira is a shady pirate that enjoys crime and hanging out in dark corners while her back is against the wall, and she's holding a dagger, a professional edgelord. But she wasn't always like this. No, Moira was once the beloved daughter of a very, very, very rich merchant couple. Her parents were the most helicopter parents that have ever parented, and she was basically treated as a porcelain doll that was too fragile to leave the manor. So she read constantly and became absolutely obsessed with pirates and the freedom they had. On her 18th birthday, she left under the cover of night after bribing one of her handmaidens to help her escape, and she's never looked back. But her parents sure have been looking for her and will do anything to get their dear precious daughter back. While on the run, Moira is basically playing out her fantasies of being a badass dastardly rogue, but who knows for how long this fantasy can go on. These three have entered the same competition as the player characters, all of them for their own goals. They are antagonists and rivals, but they aren't villainous. And now, depending on how the party acts, they could very much change and become allies or foes during the course of the adventure. Maybe Alois recognizes that he was lucky to be born under a family that believed in him, while Fernanda comes to understand that the expectations that Alois was put under were unfair and wrong. Maybe after meeting Dario, Sorella comes to understand the crimes of her father, and how a system like a monarchy is inherently unfair, and not like the stories she was told as a kid. And she decides to join Dario's rebellion instead of putting herself on the throne. Maybe Turmeric and Moira hit it off and become best of friends until Turmeric realizes that Moira is lying about having been poor, and they become mortal enemies. Or not, who knows? Your party gets to dictate that, but now this can happen at your table. It's awesome! So yeah, that's my method to come up with your own rival team. It's just a shame that this wasn't written down neatly in a nice PDF, with questions you can ask yourself to help you come up with rivals for your players and all. Fortunately, you don't have to worry about that because it's written by me and it's in the description for free. Bars! Yes, the method for coming up with your own team of rivals to use in your D&D games is in the description of this very video, and you can access it right now for free. So go out there, make some foils for your PCs, and run the anime tournament arc you've always wanted to have. And welcome to the end of the video. I was waiting for you. My rival. My throat is so sore. I was so excited to make another tip of the hat video, and since I recently started running another long-term campaign that features rivals, I wanted to turn what I learned from running them in the past into its own video. I love rivals so much. I think they add so much to a campaign, and all my players seem to love them and really respond to them. So I would love for y'all to try this out and tell me how it goes. Please do. Please tell me. It's also a lot of fun for you to come up with the characters and think of foils for your players. So yeah, super excited for the comments on this one. As always, thank you so much for watching, leaving comments, liking, and subscribing. We are steadily approaching the 100K mark. It's getting scarier and scarier by the second. In the meantime, go to my Twitter to hear me scream. It's in the description below. And yeah, that's the end of the video. Don't forget to have a lot of will they, won't they tension with your rival. Make sure your duel at Moonlight has a lot of romantic tension. And yeah, love you. I'm gonna go. Mwah.